So in the last video, I tore the motor down for this bike and replaced the crankshaft because it was locked up. Got it all put back together, and I noticed as I was putting it together that the oil pump in here had quite a bit of damage in it. So I put it all together so I can get the engine back on the bike. But now I'm gonna have to take this cover off and replace this oil pump. And then I'm gonna have to move over to this one. This one doesn't have spark. I fixed everything else with it, but I had to replace the stator, which I got that now. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that on the bike as well. And that should fix both of these. So the goal for this video is to kind of race these against each other and just compare them. But one has a big bore and one has a stock bore. I just want to see kind of the difference between the two. I'll put the list of mods and everything up on the screen so you can kind of see the difference between the two. So if you just want to skip to the riding portion, I'll put a time up on the screen. You can just skip to that. But for those of you that want to watch me get these things running, I'm going to go ahead and pull the stator cover off from this one and get the stator swapped out. So I've got the stator cover off here, and I can immediately already spot a problem. You see how it's supposed to be like a solid piece of solder? You see how it's like split? So that's definitely not making a good enough connection. And this little piece right here, this is the crank sensor. So this reads off your flywheel here. There's like a little indent. You see it right there? See how it kind of sticks up a little higher? So whenever that piece comes up and goes past this little sensor, that triggers this and tells this coil when to fire the plug. So that's how your spark plug knows whenever to spark. So this is why I don't have spark. Now these are made into the same harness. You can see this and the stator harness are the same piece. So I'm gonna go get this on the workbench and get the stator replaced. Now that I'm looking at it more closely, I can actually see the wires on the stator are actually hitting. So I'm not entirely sure what's causing that. I'll have to look at the flywheel and make sure that the clearancing is right. But to get this stator out, it's just these 3 8mm right here. And then for the actual crank position sensor, it's just 2 more 8mm there. And then there's a little bracket here that holds the wires down. There's also a little 8mm over here that holds these wires back. And that's all it is to it. All I gotta do is get the other one in. So you can actually tell if these are OEM or not based off the color. So this is the one that came out of it. You see how it's like a tan color? That's what the OEMs look like from factory. So most people usually just buy like the little cheap stators offline, or you buy the really expensive $300 ones, brand new OEM ones. But what I decided to do was just get a used OEM one. It came off a running bike off eBay. This is what I do every time I replace a stator. I just get a used OEM one, and they always work great. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this one swapped in. This piece actually has to go, you see there's a little tab here that has to go behind this little piece. There's another tab here that has to go behind that piece. So you put it in from the top and you just slide it down. That's all it is to it. Simple as that. So now I can get this cover back on the bike. So I think I understand what happened to the old one. You remember in the starter clutch video, whenever I replaced the starter clutch for the second time, whenever I took it off, I realized that these bolts were all loose and they were backing out. So whenever that happened, that stator in there, you seen how it's like worn out on these two right here. So I think what caused all of this is these bolts came out, they backed out too far, which caused them to hit the stator. And from then on, it damaged it. And then somewhere in between then and there, this broke off. So I'm pretty sure that's what killed it. These bolts came out. So always torque your starter clutch bolts, folks. You don't want that happening to you. I'm gonna go ahead and get this on and see if it has spark now. All right, moment of truth. Got it all put back together. So now let's see if it has spark. No, it's got good spark. And then I'm gonna go ahead and fill it back up with oil. And we'll see if this thing will fire up. All right, so it's got oil in it, it's got gas in it. Let's see what happens. Well, that's not very promising. Okay. So I've come to the conclusion that this spark plug is completely fouled out. And a lot of that to do is it was running pretty rich up there in the mountains anyway. And then once it lost spark, I was trying to pull start it a lot to try and get it to start because the starter clutch was out. So that's why it's so fouled. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a new spark plug for it. We'll try it again. All right, let's try that again. Please start. You can see how it's blowing black smoke out the exhaust. That's because it's running super rich. You can see how I took the airbox lid off to try to compensate for it and it cleared up a bit. So I'm definitely gonna have to mess with the jetting. I'm pretty sure the choke, yeah, the choke's off. So I'm gonna have to mess with that. This is also still loose. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing together. So now we got this thing running good. You can see now we need to move over to this one and get this oil pump swapped out. Already got a brand new oil pump here. So we're just gonna swap them out real quick. So I'm just gonna have to pull this cover off real quick. So you actually have to pull this entire clutch basket off just to get to the oil pump here. It is kind of tucked up behind that little gear, but you can get it out. Main reason I wanted to replace this thing is because you can see there's quite a bit of scarring here. So I'm really curious what this little inside is, because the way this oil pump works is you got low pressure side and then you got a high pressure side. So there's actually two different pumps in here. You got the bigger pump and then the smaller pump. And if the high volume low pressure side looks like this, I'm really worried to see what this high pressure side looks like. So we'll tear into this thing and see how bad it is. But like I said, I am just gonna go ahead and put the new one on and get this put back together. So if you're curious how these oil pumps work, these 400 EXs, there's actually two different pumps in here. You got a high volume, low pressure side. That's what cycles your reservoir. And then you got a low volume, high pressure side. And that's what actually cycles the oil through your engine cases. So whenever the oil comes in from your tank, so you put the oil in from your tank, it goes down, and that line goes into the bottom right here. That passage goes directly into this low volume, high pressure side. That goes out to the top one here. That top passage lines up with this one on the case. You can see it goes up to your oil filter, into the cap, and then from there it goes back out to that passage there. And then from there it actually fills 3 different holes on the case. So you can see it fills this whole passage up, and here, here, and here on the case there's little passages that go in, so there, there, and there. And those little passages go through the cases and fill all up. So they go on the other side to the stator, it goes up to the piston, oils the piston, goes down to the crank, oils the rod bearings right here. This one goes down into the clutch, and then this one goes back into the transmission. So whenever you put oil in this thing, say it was dry, you basically would have to fill this reservoir, fill this high pressure pump, fill this oil filter up, fill this passage up, go into all the cases and into the jets in there. It starts to fill this case up. And once it gets high enough here, you can see this passage goes up to here. From there, it lines up with this oil pump. And you can see this is the high volume side. And you can see that pumps directly out to this middle one here. And that middle one hooks up to this line right here, which cycles your reservoir. It just fills your reservoir back up. And that's the whole cycle. So it goes through the high pressure side, fills the cases up, and then from there, the low pressure side fills the reservoir back up. So this one is pretty chewed up. You can see, which was worrying me. This is the low pressure side. Can't even see the high pressure side, so I'm really concerned because this is the side that would be pressurizing your case and oiling the piston and the crank and everything. So if this side's really chewed up, that could have been what killed the crank to begin with. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the new one on here, and then we'll take this one apart and see what it looks like. So I already got the new one here. If you're doing this, you wanna go ahead and make sure you oil this side up really good, because it's gonna stay dry until the cases actually fill up before it actually pumps back up to the reservoir. So just make sure this side's oiled up really good. This side immediately goes into the high pressure side from the thing there, but you still want to put some oil in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this back on, and then we'll take that other oil pump apart and see what it looks like. Now I can start taking this oil pump apart. I think it's just 2 8mm holding it together. You can actually see how this pump works. This stays stationary when it's in the case. You can see the inside oscillates. It's basically like a rotary engine. So basically, in this case, so it comes in from right there. You can see it falls in. And as it turns, that closes off. And then it starts to build pressure. And as the pressure builds, that passage starts to open up. So this is the low pressure side, so it doesn't actually build too much pressure, but you can see it has a lot more volume. You'll see the inner side here is a lot smaller. But basically as it turns, it'll push all that oil out, and then it just starts the cycle back over again. We're gonna take this off. You can actually see the wear on here, all those little lines, which is not too bad. I've definitely seen worse. But I'm curious what this inside pump looks like. So we're gonna try to split this side off next. So you can kind of tell the difference between the high pressure and the low pressure. This is the high pressure side, this is the low pressure side. You can see how the ends out here are just kind of like it's a big angle, and the tips up here are really big angled. If you look on this one, you see it's a lot more of a steeper angle here and up here on the star. So you can see as I turn it, this is the passage that comes from the dry sump system where you put oil in, it goes down. You see this little hole actually goes through to this side. It goes in right there. It doesn't really look like it goes anywhere. There might be like a little tiny pinhole that goes into here, I'm not sure. This side works the exact same way, you can see. As it turns, if I can keep it center here. Oil falls in right there. This is where the oil comes in. Falls in right there. As it turns, it gets closed off. That in turn starts getting smaller, which builds pressure. And then as the pressure is building, this passage starts opening up. And then it just pushes it the rest of the way out. And then the cycle starts back over again over here. So you can see the reason why this one is a low pressure, high volume. You see how thick it is? So it carries a lot more oil. And this one is like super thin. Like I said, these pumps do have a high flow and a low flow. High pressure, low pressure. The high pressure side comes from the sump tank in here to the filter. Low pressure side comes from inside the cases up and back to your sump tank and oil cooler. But you can see all the wear on these. See how I wanted to replace it. So I got this whole thing put back together. I got the battery charging over there. I went ahead and put oil in it and got the whole system cycled. So now we just need to fire it up. We got power all the way back to the solenoid, but the solenoid's not working. So I'm gonna have to jump it with a pair of pliers till we get that in. But we'll see if this thing will fire up. It seems to be running great. Go ahead and get this thing put together and I'll take it for a little test ride, see how it does. So I noticed I had a pretty rough exhaust leak and I was checking it out. See, there's like a pretty big gap in there. So I was thinking maybe I forgot to put that seal in there. I remember putting it in there, but you know, maybe by chance I forgot to put that exhaust gasket. I started to look further. And that piece right in there is supposed to be connected to this. See how that one's connected? So somehow, the exhaust actually managed to break. From the tip up there to this pipe is now separated. So the header broke. If anybody has any idea how that happened, I would love to know. I'm still gonna go ahead and go test ride it because it's not too bad. Because the leak's not too bad. We'll definitely have to get a new header, which kind of sucks. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this put together and then take it for a test ride. So we're just gonna go through the gears real quick, make sure it goes through all the gears smooth. Some first now. Alright, it seems to be doing great. It's not leaking oil or anything. So this thing runs great. I'm not gonna beat on it anymore. I'll wait for the owner to get here and he can ride his and I'll ride mine. But like I said, we do have to address this header issue at some point because it is leaking pretty bad. You can hear it when you're driving it pretty bad. So we'll have to get that replaced at some point. But it feels like it has good power and everything. And also the starting solenoid. I know the button's working because you can see the light dimming. But you jump it off and it starts right up. So we'll have to get a new header and a new starting solenoid. I'll go ahead and call my buddy, have him come over, and we'll take these things for a good little ride. See if any other issues pop up. I've rode this thing around a bit and it's running good. I got the jetting right. One thing I haven't ever been able to perfect on a four-wheeler or a dirt bike is actually sustainably riding a wheelie. Always wanted to learn how to do, but never really had a good bike to do it with. So I'm gonna try and learn how to do that today. And in order to do that, you really need disc brakes on the rear and really good rear brakes. So so that whenever you go back, you can hit the brakes and it'll keep you from falling backwards. So this thing's set up perfectly for that. So I'm gonna attempt to ride a wheelie. My goal is to ride a wheelie in first or second and just keep it really slow and be able to ride it. So we'll see if I can do that. And hopefully I don't flip over backwards. So I'm gonna go ahead, make sure I got a helmet on, and we'll attempt to do a wheelie. I figured it'd be pretty funny watching me learn how to do this because it's actually way harder than it sounds and than it seems. I've tried it several times before, but I've never actually just sat down and tried to do it. I tried several times with my Raptor that I had, but it was way too peppy. It had way too much torque to try and do it. So I'm thinking the 400EX will be a perfect platform to learn on. And hopefully this thing doesn't hurt me. Probably should have bolted this down.
I think I got it figured out though. It's just my throttle kind of sucks. Whew. This thing is falling apart, bro. All my plastics. Oh my God. This thing sounds good. I was running this thing out. The old track used to go around the curves. Yeah. It's a struggle out here, man. It's definitely different.
I feel like you could have put it like more of this on this side.
See, I would, but look at the ramp. You see, it'd hit a tree if you went any more left.
I was talking about right.
think I'm running out of gas or something.
How?
I just cut out midair.
My freaking spark plug is loose.
Got this thing back going. Vine right in front of me. I was not expecting to stand up like that. There's definitely a lot more grip on this first race. Too fast.
A little bit.
Damn. I need a bumper. That shit hit right on the frame. Appreciate it.
Man, that dirt bars killed me on backing up now.
That's a tight turn. You go ahead and hit that bitch wide. You might have cut this tree down.
Mine won't spin.
Alright.
Why don't we come through here like this?
Yeah. Went the wrong way. I'm still running rough.
My shit's getting hot. I can feel it.
That's true. I'd rather ride when it's cold though.
I don't mind living in the snow, but I can't ride for long in the snow. I gotta have somewhere warm.
Right. Mine keeps like at the top end. You know how you said your 400 was doing and cut out wide open? Like it'll go all the way to like 3/4 throttle. As soon as I hit wide open, it says whap, bap, 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 bap. Sounds like I have two-step.
You might have a tuner box on there.
No, I think it's just like that main jet's a little clogged or something.
Shot a flame.
So I'm finally finished with these things. We've kind of put them to the test and they're holding up pretty well. I appreciate everybody that sat through this process with me. I learned a ton. I hope that some of you learned something as well. I've got a few side-by-sides I've been working on. So if that's more your thing, those will be in future videos. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next one.